So thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to get up there for some questions?
Do you want the questions filmed?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, we didn't. Did I convince anyone that development can't save the world? Has anyone changed their opinion from what I said? No. We're both. One person. We're both fake. We're both fake. What can I say?
Hey, we gave it a shot.
We did. We did. I should say that I might be on Channel 4 soon because I got an email today. It was first to my wife, but she's too busy. It's come to me. They were looking for people who had decided not to have children because of the environmental impact. And this is a constant thing that I have to explain to journalists who are quite stupid. I'm a journalist and my parents are journalists. I feel completely okay with saying that journalists are stupid. I had a vasectomy about 10 years ago, and then the Daily Mail picked up on it, and we had a spread in the Daily Mail, and we donated our fee to asylum seekers because we hate the Daily Mail. And we thought it would piss them off. They kept saying, so you're not having kids because you're concerned about the ecological footprint and how they would damage the earth. And we kept saying to them, no. It's not what our kids would do to the planet, it's what the planet is going to do to our kids. That's why we've decided not to have kids. And it was, you just couldn't get them to understand it. And I think that's going to be the same dynamic. And occasionally I get phoned up and journalists go, oh, will you be on this show and why aren't you having kids? And I explain it to them and they go, oh, that's really interesting, let me get back to you. And then half an hour later you get a phone call and they say, oh, the producer thinks that's too weird, that's too far out. It's like, that's fun, it's fun. Anyway, we should... Questions?
If there are.
Please let there be questions, or just push back and tell me that I'm full of shit, or tell him he's full of shit. Someone? Yes?
If we were to go about ending poverty, kind of who would guide that, and kind of where would we go from here, and what institutions would be important, or how would you envisage poverty being ended, or are you just simply saying that it's not coming?
I didn't tell you this, but I was an aid worker in Mozambique and Angola in the early 1990s, and I did 6 weeks in Cambodia in 2002. And one of the constant themes is rich white people coming along and telling people how to sort out their own lives doesn't work. And we know it doesn't work because we've been doing it for 50, 60, 70 years. You have different models of development. I mean, countries like Taiwan has done pretty well on GDP, but it's been a dictatorship for a very long time. There is that constant tension between democracy and dictatorship and investing for long-term versus using the resources you have now to meet short-term needs. I would argue, well, what is the future that we're looking for? If you want the whole world to be driving around in cars, then just continue on the path we're in now. Interesting example from Beijing, actually. When I was growing up, Beijing was famous for being the city of bicycles. And whenever they wanted to show that China was different, they would, the Western journalists would do these wide shots of hundreds of thousands of people cycling to and from work, and this was in the 1980s. It was a very explicit decision by the Chinese Communist Party to encourage the purchase of the private motor car because that was considered advanced and progress and development. And you now have, in Beijing, air quality that is so bad that lots of Western governments don't let ambassadors go who have kids because they don't want to be responsible for those kids getting respiratory diseases. And you also have, very interestingly, a lot of anger in Beijing because people now have the consumable things that they want to buy, the iPads and the this and that. And you can buy lots of those status symbols, but you can't buy clean air. And what's happening is the Chinese Communist Party has been fiddling the air pollution statistics for a long time. The American embassy put a monitor on its roof and started tweeting the daily results. And it caused quite a diplomatic incident. And what you then saw was Chinese environmental movements picking up on those data and saying not good enough, not good enough. And it becomes a political issue because, well, why are these bureaucrats lying to us about these numbers and which factories should be closed down? And then before you know it, you have political movements getting going. I mean, there's this idea that China is this just rigid one-party state, but the truth is it's far messier. And so I've wandered entirely off your question. There's a concept that I'm a big fan of called adaptive governance, which basically says the people who are closest to the problem probably have the best ideas about how to fix it. And if instead you do very much top-down command control, the people at the centre aren't smart enough because they're not getting the information coming in, because there's all sorts of filters. Even if they are getting accurate information coming in, it takes them time to formulate a policy, then it takes them time to send the policy out, and it takes more time for that policy to be implemented, by which time the problem has changed unrecognisably. So my response would be, if you want development, if you want resilience and resourcefulness and a species that can actually survive the coming cataclysms, then decision-making has to be made very, very locally.
It's a good question. I mean, I'm sure Jen's told you the global population is predicted to level off at about 9.5 billion. I think there's a fair chance that all those people will eventually live decent lives. It's a matter of whether there's enough room for the carbon dioxide that it takes us to get to that stage. And then you're into the old probability game. So the IPCC give us probabilities about what will happen if we double pre-industrial concentrations to 560. We talked a lot about the 2 degrees C guardrail last year. Anyone serious has thrown that out the window and is now planning for 4. But of course, even if we do go to 4 degrees C, you then run into a whole series of further uncertainties about exactly what that will mean for different parts of the globe, what effects it will have. So I guess it's hard to say. I think what you're going to see is a kind of seesaw between economic poverty and some kind of, if you like, environmental poverty. So climate refugees, the increase in the things like the typhoon that just hit Philippines and so on. So there's going to be a bit of a tug of war throughout your lifetimes, I think, about whether the system as it is, the global economic system as it is, can withstand those kind of shocks and get through them. Should be interesting.
Yeah, you won't be bored, guys.
Yeah.
Be bored. Other questions?
Yeah, are you saying that development won't end poverty because it doesn't necessarily have to be the kind of development that we're doing at the moment? It can be changed.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to the other question. I can imagine kinds of development that would lead to healthier, happier lives for this species, but I don't think that they are on the table politically at the moment. And even those ideas that I can think of have a relatively low probability of success because we have set in chain a series of events with the unleashing of all this carbon dioxide that means even if we stop emitting carbon dioxide today, the planet will keep getting warmer for the next 30, 40 years regardless. And we're not going to stop emitting carbon today. So it's coming back to the Toy Story thing. We are running up the down escalator. And no matter how fast we run, we still have that down escalator. Does that... it's quite an abstract answer, but...
Yeah, I mean, you've got the development expert sat here, but development, as I understand it, it's a question of how much you buy into whether the current economic system can, with a bit of oil liberally applied to the right places, fix poverty. So a lot of what people talk about in terms of education, microfinance, institutions, good governance, i.e. stamping out corruption. That's about establishing the conditions for our kind of society, i.e. a functioning free market with basic accountability. So it's basically a lot of what passes for development now is about oiling the wheels of free markets and so on. The danger is the local level stuff. How can you go in and tell people what to do? You can't. So I think the answer is it has to be some kind of supporting role. You have to find out what people need, what they think they need, and give them that. So I'm sure Jen's talked about that book, Why Not Just Give Poor People Money? Is it called that? It's
Yeah,
called
give them
something
$1
like
a day.
And I'll be honest, I'm in that camp. Cut all these development people out of the middle. Just give, if you're serious about helping poor people, just give them money. And even if only 1 in 3 of them fix their problems and get out of poverty, that's probably a higher percentage than official development activity does right now.
Are there other questions? Just very quickly, if I say September 11th to you, and I don't mean 2001, any other takers? 1973? I was very, very young. I read about this after the event. 1973, September 11th, Salvador Allende, General Pinochet. You had a country that had elected, this was Chile, they had elected a self-declared socialist, and he was doing things like giving land to poor people, investigating workers' control of factories, etc., etc., etc. So what happened?
Shock therapy. You just like impose loads of free market.
Yeah. How did they get rid of how did they get rid of Allende?
Didn't the US back Pinochet?
The CIA backed the Chilean military to launch a coup d'état, a coup of the state. Allende was killed. Thousands of activists were disappeared. Also in Argentina. I'm not going to tell you the full horror story, but let's just say there are children who are finding out that their father was an army officer who raped a left-wing activist. The baby was then born, adopted into families of right-wing rich people, the mother killed. And that happened a lot, and these cases are coming out now. My point is that there were alternative development models pursued. Chile was one. Guatemala was another CIA coup. The country that I spent a lot of time in, Mozambique, pursued an alternative development path and was attacked by South Africa, by the apartheid regime in South Africa. Your disadvantage is that you were born too late to see any of this stuff unfolding with your own eyes. All of this is in the history books for you, because you guys are all 20, 21? Okay, so have a look at General Pinochet, have a look at Salvador Allende. You can get in touch with me if you want some more links to some of this stuff. My email, mcmonthly@gmail.com, and it's also on the back of here. But I just want to say, people tried to get out from underneath the control of the West, of the multinational corporations of America. And when they became too successful in doing that, even though they had followed democratic paths like elections and freedom of speech and everything, the military intervened and lots of people died. So when people tell you there is no alternative, yeah, that's true, but that's been created. And what that does is it constrains people's mental horizons. Yeah? Okay. Other questions? Come on, there got to be more questions.
When you said that you had some like vague ideas of how you could actually sort it all out, have you got any like brief summaries of these like?
Me, brief.
Summary of these ideas? You can.
I'll take Manchester. How many councillors are there? Any takers? There are 96 councillors in Manchester. How many of them are Labour Party? 86. How many will be Labour after the next lot of elections? All of them, 96. Why is that? First past the post voting. So whoever can get the most votes becomes winner-take-all political leader. So one thing that you would do is you would have different forms of voting for representative democracy. What about, does anyone know what deliberative democracy is? This one you must look up, if you do nothing else. Deliberative democracy. This is where citizens have to take responsibility for what happens. And your name get, so you guys are all eligible for jury service? Yeah? Under deliberative democracy, not only would you be eligible for jury service and have to turn up and do it, you might be asked to sit on a panel about homelessness or food policy or whatever. What do you know about any of those things? Initially nothing, but that's great because you get to ask all sorts of simple questions to the bureaucrats and to the corporations and to the other actors. And what happens is that you learn more about that, you become political, and then you help other people become political. So on the political level, deliberative democracy, participatory democracy, as well as representative democracy. How many of you guys saw the Russell Brand thing? The video? Yeah? Okay, keep your hands up still. And how many people thought, yeah, he may be a bit of a twat, but he's got a point? Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah, with reservations. I wouldn't want to Russell Brand for Prime Minister or anything. I think alongside all of that, there just has to be an understanding of ecological limits, because James was talking to you with a bit of tongue-in-cheek in order to rile me. It's fine. No, that was his job, you know, that was self-conscious. I'm sick at heart, and I blame me, not you, that I can come in front of a room of 45 people, and I wasn't being funny. You guys are an intellectual elite in this country. You know, not everyone gets to go to university and study what you're studying. Lots of people are at university doing very, very vocational things that are, you know, architects, lawyers, etc. And the fact that in the year 2013, after 25 years of the environment movement banging on about climate change, since before you guys were born, we have known about the climate problem, that I can come in here and not one of you knows the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I mean, it's a basic fact of life. All of you know about sperm and eggs and contraception, because that's a fact of life. The carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere is similarly a fact of life, and we are not going to make good decisions and get good development if the general population and the elite don't understand the basic facts of life. And this should be on everyone who comes to this university, should be forced to take a module on climate change, because this is going to be the dominant issue over the next 50 years until civilization collapses. So here in Manchester, I would have participatory democracy, I would have deliberative democracy, I would force everyone to take a course on... It's actually part of the council's official policy that everyone who lives, works or studies in Manchester gets a day of carbon literacy training. And we were all supposed to have had it by the end of 2013. And it's been a complete up. So I'd educate people also about their own personal ecological footprint. I'd offer bonuses for people to have vasectomies.
Okay, I think we're going to have to end the conversation on vasectomy. Okay.